All right, everybody. Hope you're doing good. I'm Rob Foster. You're listening to KC Music Talk. Always talking to different musicians around town, and we got a guest today, first returning guest, Paul Greenlease. How's it going, man?
Good, Rob. Good to see you.
Yeah, man. The first time we did that interview has got to be at least 3 years ago.
At least it was pre-Rona.
Yeah, it was definitely pre-Rona. Yeah, I think that was the third one that we did. But thanks a lot for coming and doing that, man. That was really nice.
It's a blast.
Yeah. So you and I, real quick, you know, I'm sure I met you for the first time out at the jams and stuff, and we played, you know, at least 30 to 70 jams together sure. And but I've always enjoyed your playing, man, especially when you and Danny and Dave Hayes, I remember, you know, playing with you guys specifically, you know, at the jam, and I always had a lot of fun. You guys are always like, all three of you guys are kind of decent listeners, and you're kind of looking around and listening, and you guys aren't just, I don't think any of the three of you are just like blues players. You kind of got, you know, some more talent to you, and you can branch off into stuff, so I've always enjoyed your playing, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, so today I think what we're going to do is we're going to do something different. We're going to talk a little bit about the bass, but we're going to do a little playing. We haven't done really any playing on the show yet, so had Paul come in here and bring his basses, and so we're going to have a kind of a bass hour here. But first of all, tell everybody who you are and, you know, 30-second intro or something.
Oh, sure. Okay. I'm Paul Greenlease. I play bass. There you go. No, and I play bass. Let's see, who do I play bass for? I play bass for Elton Dan, which is an Elton John tribute, and which is super fun. I also play bass for Flanagan's Right Hook, which, of course, in that band, the electric fiddle is the lead guitar in that band.
Yeah,
so it's real super fun. I also play bass for Howard Mahan a lot, and I still have a working relationship with Danny Montero and Dave Hayes, Dave Hayes band, and I do some stuff with them occasionally. So yeah, and I do teach too. I get bass lessons. I've taught since 1998. So back when I was like 10 years old.
You're forever 29. But yeah, man. So you and I have had just, you know, many random conversations over the years about music and stuff like that, and so I thought I'd have you in here talking about the bass a little bit. So for a lot of people that are kind of like learning it, what I'll tell you what I think here in a minute. But what do you think the role is of the bass in a band?
I think the role of bass is you're a team player, you know, and your job is to make the band sound good. You know, and there's times you want to take the reins and lead the charge, then there's times you just want to make everything stable so everybody else plays better. And a lot of times as a bass player, I want to be somebody that my presence there, like, they don't even realize it, but it helps them play better. They're relaxed, they know where everything is. I'm doing stuff that helps them just intuitively play like they play.
Right.
You know, that's really my job.
Sure. I heard, oh crap, Dave Holland. So it was that Miles Davis tribute that his Bitches Brew DVD.
Yeah.
They did a big documentary, but he said that he thinks the bass is the center of the band. And I never thought about that before till he said that, because I always thought it was the drums, but I'm like, hold on a second. No. Bass is sort of, you mentioned the stability, right, of making sure everybody knows where they're at, and I think that's what he's meaning, is that like you're kind of the center of everything, and everybody's kind of swirling around the bass a little bit. But so I love what you said about the being the center of attention, or the lack thereof. Like, what have you noticed about bass playing with being the center of attention? Have you seen a lot of people that kind of don't, how do I want to put this, that maybe like play too much, I would say, you know, or
well, sure, there's plenty of that, and usually, because I've been that guy before, you know, but most of the time, it comes from a myopic view of the music. If you just think about the bass line and stuff like that, you have to think about the whole band and what's going on, you know. And sometimes something really simple or not playing at all is the coolest thing you can do. That's the most gratifying thing you can do as a bass player, and because you're creating space. And then, you know, like, probably one of the biggest compliments somebody ever gave me was, I was playing like in a blues band at a festival, and I was playing pretty simple. I was playing like I only knew how to play simple, and then it came time to do a solo, and I did like an end of the world bass solo, you know, I mean, you know, pretty good one.
Yeah.
And so we're watching the video of it. He goes, now check this out. It's like it comes out of nowhere and it just hits him over the head. Then you're back to playing right in the pocket, you know.
Yeah.
And so you want to be both of those guys. You want to be the guy that can really step out and like a secret weapon, but you also want to be the supportive team player. You know.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Is that something? Is that something you notice that younger bass players do, or not necessarily have anything to do with your ability level necessarily? It's more like awareness. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you notice older guys still like playing too much, or is it?
Well,
Do you know what I'm asking?
I would say, I would say like with younger bass players, sometimes they're playing too much because they've got the chops to do it. But also, like they just. A lot of times, sometimes younger bass players want to play everything like two on top, like they're on their way to a fire. You know, like they're driving a fire truck through traffic on the way to a fire, and because they're afraid the song's going to drag to a screeching halt if they don't do that. You know, I saved that when I was younger. I was like that. I wanted to play more aggressively and stuff like that. Now I'm like, I'm just gonna, you know what, the fire truck's going to get there when it gets there. You know, and I'm not going to push on anything. And I've heard enough recordings of myself that if I push on things, it adds tension to the groove. It doesn't sound musical, you know.
Interesting.
And so if I push on things like I'm trying to speed it up, sometimes you want to push on things and create like a tension and then snap it back, you know, into a verse or something like that. That's different. You know, that's a musical thing. That's not trying to speed the song up.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you're talking about leaving space. Like, I mean, they do this in every single pop song. They drop it all out, start of the third verse or something, and then they all kick back in hard. And they keep doing it because it sounds really good, and you don't have to play like the whole entire song.
Yeah.
And this is an impossible question to answer, but like, how do you know when to do that? Right.
Experience and also listening. Yeah, and also, I think understanding what the objective, understanding the music. If you really understand the music and what the band is trying to do, the ensemble is trying to do, then you're probably going to play pretty close to the right thing. You know, and you'll know when it's you'll know instinctively when it's time to lay out. And I think you know, a neat thing about music is you use your intuitive side of your brain and your analytical side of the brain at the same time, and they've got two separate accelerators. They can both be going great guns. One could be island, you could favor the other, you know, and because you're thinking like, okay, this bridge is coming up, yeah, but also your heart's beating, you're feeling stuff, your eyes are, you know, but also you're thinking, after 4 more times of this, I'm going to the bridge, you know, bring it down, you know, and that kind of thing. Those are all happening at the same time.
Right.
And that's a neat thing about playing music is that it really, you harness both sides of your mind at the same time. And I'm sure you do with a lot of other stuff. But music seems like a great example of just that total intuitive, inspirational thing. Also with this overseeing thing goes, okay, now this is coming up. You need to do this, you know. So
that's planning. I mean, you're planning out, you know, and I know that I do that while I'm playing, or at least I try to do that. Okay, we got one more verse, then chorus, and we hit the thing. Then I need to cue the band, and you know.
Well, then you're also thinking, okay, after this song we're going to play this, and if that goes well, we'll play this. If it doesn't go well, I'm going to change directions. Also,
while you're
Also, you go, when was the last time I had a chocolate shake at the Highboy in Independence? Is that still there? What's that restaurant by? You know, that was all happening at the same time for me. I mean, and then if I'm not careful, I'll go, I'm in the second verse with it. You know, and you don't want that to happen. You know, but it's I think it's and you know, music is such a it's on the analytical side, it's layer after layer of simple math, happening at the same time.
Right. So grab your bass a second. So with that whole idea of playing too much, I'm fascinated by fills, especially for drummers and bass players, of people playing too much or too little. For example, in my other band, we had a difference in philosophy from the bass player to our lead guitar player, and the bass player wanted to kind of go more almost red dirt with our country band, where he wanted to go a little bit more exciting, a little bit more maybe the rock side of country. So he was wanting to do a little more fill, a little more, riffy kind of a style. Yeah. And I don't know if my other guy wanted him to only go but he didn't want as much of the riffy, as much of the, and so that was like a little bit of a tension in our band of even the decision of where we're going, with our band, and so that was deciding how much fills, we're going to be doing here, because he wanted more, guitar player wanted almost less, because he wanted, I don't know if he wanted 100% straight country, like traditional, but he wanted it probably more traditional than, you know what I'm saying?
So they weren't entirely on the same page directionally.
Yeah. And that was affecting his, amount of bullshit he was throwing in, and so can you demonstrate, like, I don't even care what it is. I guess I don't even really care what style, but maybe play like it could be like a shuffle or a country something or whatever. Like pick some key and some style, and show them kind of a really basic thing, and then show them like what.
And I would say rather than fills, I would say lead-in tones. Because lead-in tones are how you get from point A to point B, and there is such a thing as fill, like like that. That's a great like bass fill.
Do that walking thing you just did.
And I'm leading up.
So you're doing a half step walk.
Okay, so I went whole step, then chroma. Okay, and a lot of times with my lead-in tones, there's a strong beat, weak beat philosophy that applies to a lot of walking bass, especially with jazz walking bass, where your harmonically strong beats are beats 1 and 3, and your weak beats, where you can play extensions or passing tones, are more like beats 2 and 4. That's not always. Sometimes you just push out of the key and slam it back in on beat 1 of the next measure. But so like if I'm going like a minor walk, if I gotta go from here to here and it's minor, if I went like here's beat 1, here's beat 3, here's beat 1 of the next measure, I would go 1, 2, 3, passing tone. Now, and the reason I would pick this note, if I was in,
turn just back so they can see.
If I was, there you go. That's fine. If I was in, so if I'm in F major and I was going to play a measure of G minor walking bass from G up to C, the 2 to the 5, right? If I did this, here's beat 3, that's the 3rd, that's a chord tone, right? Now, the reason I would pick this note, because for beat 2 is, and it's called the minor thirds rule. I'm picking a note on that minor interval that is in the key center. This is F major, so A works there. And then this is just a passing tone. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. But I might go, I might just push it right out of the key center and slam it back into gear. Sometimes I do that too. It just sounds whatever sounds good at that time.
You'll go out of the key and then put it back in key?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as like, I was messing around with that. It's like the roll credits of the Jeffersons, and it's probably Chuck Rainey on bass, So this is the bass line. Here's the fill.
Right. So play that whole thing without the fill. Okay, now play it with the fill. Cool. So the one is very sparse, you know,
Yeah.
and you left almost I don't know about a full measure, but 2 big beats there of just nothing.
Yeah, so
and, you know, the first time.
2. Yeah.
Well, after da-da-da-da,
Yeah.
and then you just leave it there, and then you play your second half of the thing. And can you think of like another simpler fill that you could put in there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, darn it.
Yeah, da dun da dee da da dun da dee. It's kind of the rhythm that
Yeah.
you're playing there instead of da da dee da da da. You're doing like
Yeah.
triplets, right, on the fast one. So why would you? So why would you want to play the fast one?
It just depends on the context, and actually, that's kind of how I think it's probably Chuck Rainey playing it. That's on the roll credits. The Jeffersons was recorded through in front of a live studio audience, and he's going, and that whole thing in various rhythms is a super big gospel format of Southern gospel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you can. I mean, sometimes it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
You know, and it just depends. I mean, is it is it going to be the Winans or is it the Gaithers? You know, or is it somebody else? Or is it Hillsong? You know, that's not gospel, but anyway.
Yeah.
And like a lot of those like '70s TV shows had really hot players on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, they had all the studio. Like you listen to like
LA studio guys. Yeah.
yeah, and like you listen to like Maud came on. You know, it's like 1971. I go, who is that singing that, man? It was Donny Hathaway. No wonder why it's awesome. That guy sang the theme to Maud. You know, like wow, they got that guy. That's amazing. You know.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of your fills are going to define you as a bass player, stylistically, and like when you're playing country, it's all about using fills, lead-in tones. They're almost interchangeable terms at this juncture, right? So I would say like, you're going. Lead into. Oh, what am I doing? And if you don't do your lead-in tones right, even if you get from here to here when you're supposed to, if you go the wrong direction or do something that makes it not sound like it's going there, you're the devil. And the band will turn around and look at you like you just,
Going to in blues, going to that big monstrous 4 chord is a big example of that, right?
And country music is all in bass playing. You really have to think ahead because you've got to walk in and out of everything.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of like, because if I play a 3-hour gig with my band, and then I know that I have like, not even just this, so you have like the song, you have the song, you have the set, you have the night, and then you have many nights. And
Yeah.
for all of us that are sort of like improvisers, you know, we have the song, but we're improvising a lot of, you know, some of the night. We're also thinking about our bandmates, where you know that there's moments where you need to play it kind of the same every single time, like a walk-up is a good example. But then there's other times where you can totally like jack around, and it doesn't hurt the quality if it actually enhances it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm thinking of is like, I know for me, there's the same thing on my violin parts, you know, when I play with Scott. It's like there's certain times where the same solo, same, you know, because it needs to be there. But then there's other times where I'm picking different moments to do certain things. And with that filling stuff, like let's just give those 3 examples. So you have the basically no fill. Mm-hmm. You have a medium exciting fill, and then you have the one where you're pretty notey, right? And you're going through your head and you're trying to pick which one on what song and whatever, and like it. I mean, I think that takes a while to get that, to figure out when that's sort of appropriate to put, you know, into...
A lot of it's experience, and the biggest thing is just understanding the music you're playing, but also, you know, like, if you're playing bass, like, you really have to think about, like, what is going to make the singer want to sing this next line? Is it some big fancy fill or something like do 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 do? There's your note, you know. Like emotionally, what's going to make them really into it to sing it? Not having to power through your playing, but actually want to sing the next thing that's happening in the song. And also with soloists, you know, like there's that in session thing with Albert King and Stevie Ray Vaughan, 1983. You know, and they're doing Texas Flood. Something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they're very static, and they do the same fills on every time to the changes, and you realize that those guys had about 3 or 4 licks apiece they were using, and they're just banging away the same thing. Now Stevie Ray Vaughan's band would go, or next time they might go. It changed direction, changed intensity levels, and I think it made a lot of the same stuff Stevie was doing, you know, sound different. He could apply that same lick into the different context, and eventually it did make him play different stuff too, instinctively.
It affected his playing in a good way, where it triggered.
It gave him, and they're really good at following when he was wanting to lean into it, and when he was wanting to lay back and get quiet, you know, and that's. And blues is a good root style, and so is country. Those are both root styles, you know. And I would say jazz is too, because you know. And what I mean by root styles is those are styles of music that teach you about music, because you could learn 1,000 classic rock songs, and you would know 1,000 classic rock songs, but you would not know anything about how songs work, you know. And older blues and country songs are templates of songs. Yeah. You've got this thing, you've got that thing, you know, and
that everything builds off of.
And then with jazz, you got, you know, standards, and those were written, you know, between about 1925 and the early 50s, and by professional songwriters, you know, from between the hours of 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, mostly, you know, and they're very structured, and they're standards because they were the cream of the crop, and they survived, you know, they stood the test of time, right? Otherwise, they would, no, we wouldn't even know what they are. You know, but jazz is a great style that teaches us about music composition and how you get snapshots of how real major and minor key centers actually work. And so then you go, oh, wait a minute, this pop song is just like this other thing, but they're just diluting the tonality, you know, and kind of bluesing it up a little bit, doing a thing called modal interchange, you know, where they're like, well, that 4 chord really should be major, but we're going to make it dominant here, you know, or we're gonna make the 1 minor but the 4 dominant, you know, and stuff like that, and it's all for effect, and it just how the artist was feeling, you know, at the time, right, you know, but if you understand how real major and minor key centers work, then you go, okay. I get what they're doing here. It's just like this one thing but different. You know? So like.
So with the filling, let's try the same thing with like a country style. So try like a so something like that where you guys are sitting. You can grab the other bass.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that
for man.
Good for the country. I can play country on 5 or 4, but it's kind of more fun to play on the 5. Because there's so much root fifth action. When you have another lower string, you can actually do more root fifty stuff.
Bass players and your toys.
Oh yeah. Well, I got my 19-string bass here in the case here. Also. Okay, so what are we talking about?
Okay, so do like a what I'd love to see is when you're sitting with your like, because I notice all the country players do like boom, 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 and they're just doing that kind of the whole night. And I'd love to hear what a good little fill would sound like on something like that, where it's not too notey, but you're given something at the end of this, so like dun 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 dun. Yeah, dee da da da. You're doing that kind of thing. Play me another one. Do you have another like rhythmic style one?
Well, you were talking about like a song like maybe Ramblin' Fever, great big country anthem.
Okay,
you know,
yeah.
which I love that song. Of course, it's Merle, so I love it. I outlined the melody on that. So I'm kind of playing a little bit of that melody with my lead in tones.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I'm not even trying to do it. It's almost like just happening because it seems like the music needs that, you know. And I could play da 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 da. Okay, yeah, but
sure. Which that's really basic, right? Yeah.
Which is fine too, you know. But I mean, and you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm playing too much stuff. It just depends on the context, you know.
Yeah, sure. And I know a lot of times, because you were talking about it being so mathematical, that you take these 16s or these 12s, you know, that you have, and one time you go, and then on the very, very last thing into the verse, then you put your fill.
Yeah.
As opposed to every 4 or every 2 or, you know, and you can play with that all gig, right? I mean, when are you actually throwing those in? Because you can do like a... Do you ever do like a super notey one, but you like wait till the end of the verse? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so then you're playing a notey one, but sometimes it can come off kind of cool because you were so simple the rest of the time.
Or you know, if it's a song where the first verse is repeated later on in the song, that's a time to make more of a statement too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or make less of one. You know, leave a whole bunch, leave it really hanging out there. You know, make it different than what it was before.
Sure, yeah. Play me that same like a dun, and play me a really bad country one, like way too notey, absurdly notey. Like, what can you think of something like that? Like, what would be a bad version of playing a country bass?
Actually, that's not really bad.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's notey as heck, right? Yeah.
That would be distracting, and really, and I would say like, and I've told like a lot of younger bass players, they look at me like I have an arm growing out of my head or horns. Like I'm like, dude, man, you gotta start singing, because that'll keep you from going like you go. I wonder if I can get my finger all the way up here and back here by beat one instead of just going.
Right.
Yeah, it makes you start thinking about the song. You're like, wait a minute, and I remember I started singing. I go, when I play a song by myself, I play it one way, but when I am singing and playing, I play about a third as much stuff, because I can't physically do all that and still, and I go, wait a minute, maybe other people are listening to me play this, and I'm distracting them,
Yeah, sure.
And so,
have you noticed that young kids have a really hard time holding back? Because I would guess that high schoolers would just be like, especially when they have some sort of facility, when they're in jazz band, they can play some stuff, And do you have a hard time like kind of holding them back a little bit, or?
I know I was that way, but I don't really see a lot of high schoolers act as bad as I did when I was 25, as far as that. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I set the bar pretty low for the, getting in trouble for overplaying, because so I was, but I came out of a music school and I had like a lot of chops. I was practicing 12 hours a day.
Right.
My instincts were real sharp too, and I would do. At a certain juncture, I'd play like a matinee at the Grand Emporium, and then I would go play in a country band from 9 to 1, and then I would go play at a place called Grace's. It was Grace who did the food at the Grand Emporium. She would take all her food leftovers over there, and her boyfriend was an ex-Chess Records guy, sax guy. They had an after hours club at 13th and Washington, KCK, and they served beer under the table, and they had food there and stuff like that. And it was so long ago they had a payphone. And the funny thing was, it was a house. They'd taken out all the walls. It was just a big square with tables and chairs. And your stage, we were in the corner of the stage light, was one red 60-watt light bulb, and it was like a time warp. And it was kind of funny. Like that'd be my third gig of the day, and I actually played better at that time of day, because I was tired. I couldn't overplay. I wasn't trying to play everything on top of the beat like I was on my way to a fire. I was just relaxed.
That's interesting.
I just was relaxed, and I was fluid. It was coming out of me. I was just fluid.
You're extremely warmed up. You've been playing all day. Yeah, that's really interesting.
But it was, and I remember the guy, because I would meet back up with some of the guys that I would do that matinee with. And the band would go, it's the best you've sounded all day, Paul. At 4 in the morning.
All right,
that gig was 2 in the morning till about time the sun came up.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Okay, so a couple of things that I've always noticed is that like when I'll notice some really beginning bass players, a lot of times they'll sit there and it's really easy to just root, and they'll just kind of like cheat sort of, and when they don't know how to like do sort of a walking thing. Can you like really slowly like show us what a walk would look like exactly what notes you're playing, and like just demonstrate what walking bass.
Song,
like let's take like a swingy blues, so like or a shuffle or something that you would do. Like a dum dee dum do dum do 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 do, something like that, and
how about maybe a little swingier one, like
okay, sure,
with a quick 4. Now, what if I add a little bit more, put more spin on it? So what I did was I kind of trapped the C. So start below it, then above it.
you're going above and below
Yeah.
the interesting.
So-
Yeah. Can you play the trap thing like and sort of like show
Oh,
them
absolutely.
like
Man,
way
right.
slower, like I'm
Absolutely.
talking like a
So-
fourth slower than that, you know,
so,
like dun,
Here's that trap thing. I'm going from G up to C. It's a quick 4 in key of G. G, A, B, and then I'm gonna jump ahead of a C all the way up to D, below C to G, chromatically down,
Oh, weird.
and this is that fifth above. It's almost a ghost.
Oh, weird, man. Yeah, that's crazy. Because even the beginning of it, you were just doing a 1-3-5 for the first 3 notes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like, what would be like? Because that seemed relatively advanced, right? What's something that they could do like immediately? Like it just, I mean, one
Well,
3-5 crap is really basic, but
a
like,
triad says a lot. It really does. And sometimes it's almost too descriptive. That's why it sounds too simplistic. But really, we can go. That's just triad.
yeah, sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. 5, 6, 1 octave, 6, 5, 3.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of like as a teacher, I'm thinking of the progression of
Yeah.
learning, right? So you could start with just 1-3-5 and get that really down. You're talking about adding a 6th in there, which is cool, and then definitely. So that maybe is the next stage where you could add like a 6th. Because I'm thinking like week to week as a student, you know.
Yeah,
so
that's
you
kinda
add the 6th, and then you did the walk up kind of thing, the chromatic walk up. That could be maybe a 3rd stage, right?
That would
or
be
something.
like a 7th stage.
Maybe 7th stage. Oh, okay.
And I really, at a certain juncture, I do introduce my students to 12-bar blues, and I just like draw it on the inside of their book that they're reading out of usually, you know, and it's hard to find a song that has a really super straight ahead repetitive 12-bar blues bass line. That's going to be. It's really hard to find that, actually, you know. So I just have.
Would rockabilly have some stuff like that, like some of those old '50s tunes or something? Like
a little bit closer, but it's more proprietary too. I mean, and like I like maybe like T-Bone Shuffle.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And so I'm going 1, 3, 5, 6.
Yeah, so there you added the little chromatic. Yeah.
First week I'll teach them this, and then the next week I go.
Yeah.
And then I'll go. You know, and then we start talking about instead of going. And that dominant
The 7th, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that makes blues kind of a unique style is the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord are all dominant 7th. In a major tonality, and of course I'm just saying this for them, in a major tonality, the 1 chord would be major, the 4 chord would be major, and the 5 chord would be dominant 7th. You know, and but if you did that, it would sound like, let's see.
Yeah, right.
Instead of. It makes all the difference.
Way too happy.
Yeah,
you know, with the major.
It's a little too elevatory.
All right, elevatory. Yeah, very jazzy.
But in blues, you don't ever play a real major tonality. Yeah, you're playing, a dominant 7th, which is root, major 3rd, 5th, minor 7th, and the 3rd and the 7th define the whole major minor thing. And
yeah, so like because I'm thinking of like, what would I do with those beginning bass players that are sort of kind of getting it, and you're adding, you're going like step at a time, you know. So if you're like A, you know, you know, you're doing something like that, and then you're adding, you know, you're adding that little chromatic walk up, and I'm trying to think of how many of those like how many. I'm trying to think like how many weeks, you know, until you get to something like that. Let's say if you're going over 3 months and you're working on walking bases like your unit or something, you know, as a teacher, and like what. I'm trying to think out like what are the steps there, like exactly what you would
just
take
say
them through,
super
you know?
incremental, and it depends from student to student how much what their ability to how well they know their fingerboard, obviously, but
Sure.
but what their ability to adapt new ideas quickly. Some people.
Sure.
And I found like usually guys my age and older, they've got a whole lifetime of thinking they were right about something and realize they were wrong. So if I show somebody my age that, I've got to sit there while they do it 50 times. And they won't let me move on. Now if it's like a 12-year-old, you know, they get it immediately a lot of times because their minds are like sponges, you know.
Yeah.
And not everybody, and of course those are generalizations, not everybody's like that.
Sure.
But
Their ego is not fighting you as bad either. Sometimes the 50-year-old they're set and they're, you know, you're telling them they're like, well, and they kind of don't like. Sometimes they don't like you correcting them and stuff. But yeah. Okay. So with that stage of walking bass is like one. Instead of just Rudy. You're sitting there with the roots and you're like, you know, I think somebody did a bunch of rootiness with a Folsom the other day. Person that you both you and I know, which I won't mention their name, but it was cracking me up how it's like, we've talked about this a bunch of times with the jams, and, you know, people come and they'll hear a country tune and they've never played a country, you know, anything country.
It's a pretty, especially as a bass player, if you haven't ever played country, of course, people think that country music is easy to play, and those are people that have no idea how to play country music.
Yeah.
And they're not good enough to be playing country music usually, you know. So, and I will say, and I broach this subject with people sometimes, like, you know, country music is professional musician music. People that play full time know how to play country music, you know, and it's part of your toolkit, you know.
Sure.
Now, do you know how to play all kinds of country? Do you know every country song there is? No.
Right.
You know, I don't.
Yeah.
I get stumped all the time. You know, and I'm like, man, why don't I know that? I've played so much country, and I've played a lot.
It all, you know, melds together.
It melds together, but also there's just so many songs, it's impossible to know them all.
Right.
You know, but that's like people that say that, oh, I don't like playing blues, it's too simple. And I had a friend of mine, he's probably the best musician I know, honestly. I've been in and out of being in awe of him, and he's a great person and an awesome musician, but he goes, yeah, I don't like playing blues, it's too simple. And my thought was, you should never play it, man, because you're not getting what it's about.
Yeah.
It's not about anything complicated. It's it's big attention to very simple stuff. And for me, like playing a slow blues, where I'm at now, and I've been there for a while, I use all my concentration playing that. You would think it's like, like I just do it in my sleep. I'm really usually paying attention, man. I'm interested and I'm engrossed.
Sure. Some of those are laid back so hard that you've got to kind of pay attention.
Yeah,
you know, you were talking about playing on top. Right, those young players playing on top of the beat so bad, and those sound so bad when you play them on top. You got to really like hold it back and go behind the beat and stuff.
And I remember being younger, and you know, of course, like country music, like you play exactly what the kick drum is doing every time it kicks, or you are the devil. You know, and you're a terrible bass player, and you should be drawn and quartered, you know, and buried at sea. You know, so nobody can find you. You know, so and of course I'm being dramatic there, but you know, that's how specific that is, and and you know, you get that pounded into you, if any R&B or anything like the kick drum, you know, and like that's like that's a 2 measure pattern. You know, it'll change on the chorus. I really get most of my note, and a lot of younger bass players don't really get the concept of note length, you know, and
what do you mean by that?
they're just, you know. That's all long anyway. But I'm just thinking like you know, and
You mean they're not holding through long enough?
they're holding through too long. They're running, or they're you know maybe too staccato sometimes, but usually it's like it's all blurring together, and that seems like that's one of the last things bass players actually learn in my playing experience is like when should I make a hole, and and I listen to the snare drum more than anything.
Interesting.
And then I'll like listen to the kick drum. You know, make sure I'm syncing up and not sounding like I'm not paying attention. You know, and but like a snare, like if I'm doing a root fifth. I'm right. Crack. Crack. Or like maybe a song like the way. And I don't always lay on the snare drum, but that's where I usually chop my notes off to make space, and it makes the whole song feel good. Or crack, crack.
Yeah, for Joker.
And if you do that, you never worry about whether or not the song is fast enough. You've created that space there that makes everything make sense, and that's where I get all my feel from. And I get a lot of information about patterns of stuff to play. It seems like from all the cymbals, like the hi-hat and all the cymbal work and stuff like that. That kind of tells me what kind of stuff I'm going to play too, and that's almost instinctive, and I don't even think about it.
Right. You know? So you're listening to the drummer a lot. It sounds like, you know, and it's weird. It's so funny how we're up on stage, and let's say you've got a 6 or 7 piece, so you've got a decent sized band, and you've kind of got, because I'm usually one of those people out with the lead singer, so we got front line and back line, and you guys are all, you know, maybe the rhythm guitar and you and the bass and drums are all kind of linked up with each other, because it's funny because I'm looking at the singer and I'm playing opposite of the singer a lot of times, but you guys are listening to each other back there, which is
kind of what I do usually is I usually lock a beat on the singer, you know, and I'm thinking about the drummer and other people I'm playing with and stuff like that. But while I'm doing that, I'm like just burning holes in the back of the singer's head.
Sure.
You know, I'm just paying super close attention to them, you know, and what are they doing? I got my mind on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're on my radar. I'm thinking about what do I need to do here? What's going to make this singer want to sing this next line? And and if you do that for people, they kind of appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, the singer is really the point. You know, I mean, it's really they're the point of the song, and your job is to make them look good. You already said that earlier, and you know, yeah. So I mean, but see, you're at a point where a lot of the chords and a lot of stuff is second nature to you on many songs, especially when you're playing like blues or kind of these typical country or rock gigs, or you've played these songs for many years. You have the extra bandwidth to do that though. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because you know where you're all, you know your fingerboard, you know the song, and so now you can put all attention on them, and that's tough, I think, for younger, less experienced players. Is they're sitting here, hyper focused on their own shit,
And at a certain juncture, that's just myopic. You're just paying attention to what you're doing. I'm locking in with the drums, and I'm doing this. Well, all this other stuff's going on around you, That is. In addition to that, you touched on a couple things. Knowing your fingerboard, people that are professional musicians, they know their fingerboard extremely well, And for me, a real key to unlocking my fingerboard was modal theory.
Mm.
And you know, and for the listeners, you know, a major scale is a mode. That's Ionian mode. The other 6 modes are just the major scale starting on different degrees. And for me, like I learned how this is what worked for me was locking the modes together instead of like trying to play in one mode all the way up down the neck, which on a bass you don't have enough strings, so you're just getting part of the picture. But what really made the light bulb come on for me was going, okay, I'm in G, I'm going to play a D Mixolydian, up to G Ionian, up to C. Now I'm going to play Lydian off the rest of the way back up. And on the way down, I think of a different mode every time I cross a string until I only have an octave left. So Lydian, Ionian, Mixolydian.
Weird, yeah.
So, you know, Phrygian, Aeolian, Dor. Yeah.
Wow.
And for me, that kind of, and from then you go, that was all G major, you know?
Yeah.
You can't, and the way a stringed instrument works, like once you learn it in one key, good and solid, you can transpose it to a different key, and you're 80% there to have it in all your keys once you learn it really good in one key, you know. And that's what my experience, and that's what I do with my students too. And I've noticed, especially with jazz guys, you know, like, and they've come to blues jams, and they're keeping up. They're doing really good on the blues, right? You know, but here's something we're going D minor, G dominant 7, back to D minor. It's a 12-bar blues in D minor, but the 4 chord is dominant. I've got D minor to G dominant 7th. What key am I in? Well, hey, I'm at C major. I can play anything in C major in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I found with jazz guys will use the heck out of 2/5 licks, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, any of that kind of stuff. You get 4 or 5 good jazz licks out of the Jamie Aebersold 2/5 book, you are in business. You know,
Yeah,
for
sure.
life, and then you just start modifying off that. But also, I've noticed, and this works for me too, 2/5 licks, and then also if I can lock into a key center, I can do some damage. And I do when I play with Colleen Deeker in Flanagan's. She trades off with me, right? And if I can get her into some kind of guitar-y sound and stuff, I'm at an advantage because I'm in fourth. Like that, you know. She's in fifth. It's kind of awkward in fifth, and of course. And I say that I have to do stuff like that to keep her from completely mopping up the floor with me. But also, I can get a little bit more ammo if I can lock into a key center. I can really sing. You know what I mean? And I'm not thinking patterns. I just know where I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And so then I can actually make some musical stuff happen. And also I do a lot of trading off stuff with people like that I know can just, you know, mop up the floor with me because it's fun.
Yeah,
you know?
sure. Yeah,
I'm okay with getting beat up on like that. But
it's two different, you know, especially when it's two different instruments. You know, it's just gonna be different. You know,
and it's just fun, and it just loosens the whole thing up. You know,
like I remember doing that a lot with you and me and Dave. You know, at the jam, we would do, you know, go back and forth.
And of course, and I kind of stack the cards. I'll add some binkety bank, which makes it, you know.
So show them a tiny bit of slap. So again, a lot of times when I see demonstrations, they go, you know, it's like that, and then you know. So can you like try to do it like super slow, like, and can you turn a little bit so they can see it?
And here's a rudimentary thing, of course. Now with this 5-string, and my first 5-string was actually a Music Man Stingray. I went from a 4-string to a 5-string because I was going to play top 40 in Asia and pay off all my student debts. And the only thing that came out of it was I started playing 5-string because all that Taylor Dane and Madonna and all that stuff was on keyboard bass, so that was way lower than a 4-string, right? So I got dragged kicking and screaming into a 5-string. So the string spacing is so much closer that I couldn't slap like this. I had to learn how to really make it more compact. And I've always slapped off of my last fret right here.
Okay.
And that sound happens from, it's like hitting a cue ball. You don't go like this. You go like that, you know. Or if you like, flip your brother in the back of the head with your like that. You don't go like that.
You don't hold it on there.
Yeah,
you kind of hit it.
If you do it for a split second too long, you feel like you've broken your finger in two, right? As a kid, right? You do that, and then all the pain goes to your brother.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're hitting it and pulling off.
Yeah, and just right off that last fret there. And some guys like Marcus Miller slaps out here. So does Victor Wooten. Yeah, they slap here. But the way their basses are set up, they can do this, and it sounds like that. You know. So I like this right here. It's good and tight. It gets rid of a lot of the harmonics that I don't want, you know. And so if I went like that, okay.
And you're pulling off with that first finger.
Yeah,
right?
and I start my students off slapping with an exercise that this guy I used to know played bass for B.B. King for about 10 years. He taught it. He taught me and Kurt Rosie this. My BFF. It's thump, 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 thump. That's the whole thing. Pop, thumb, thumb 3 times. Thumb, thumb, pop on the 4th time. And the growth happens with any kind of like right hand exercise with the loop, right? Do that and just go with all the strings, do that. Then we start on bass. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're doing a bunch of different patterns with the hit and then pull.
And
it's just a million different patterns of that.
And
right?
the funny thing is, I think you could teach 20 different guys the same, or girls the same bass line, slapping, and it would sound different because there's so much inflection with your knuckles smack and stuff and all that, you know, and everybody would sound different playing it.
Weird. Yeah. That's I know, like, everybody just loves slap bass. You know, I mean, it sounds so cool. Obviously, especially during, you know, it's funky stuff. It just sounds ridiculously awesome. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, most funk songs don't have slap bass. They really don't. And I mean, like
Bootsy was a big one, you know.
Yeah, he's a great slapper. And, you know, Larry Graham and the older school slap guys are all thumb and very little pop. You know, they're almost all thumb. You know, and very little pop. Newer guys are more alternating like this.
Yeah.
And then there's the Victor Wooten, that down up. And I can't even do it.
Yeah.
I can do it. Anytime I do it, it's almost like at the heat of the moment. I can't sit around and do it. I've had students that could do it all day.
Yeah, weird.
Because they sat down there and figured it out until they got it, you know. And it never came natural to me, you know. So I never did it. But with anything, go ahead.
So with something like slap bass, because this is another thing that I find is that a lot of people want to do all the flashy stuff first. We've talked about that for the last 30 minutes about getting your basics, you know, and like let's say somebody starts the bass in like 3rd or 4th grade-ish. Like, let's say they're doing it at school and they're taking, you know, kind of some lessons, and like maybe they're an orchestra band or something like that, or maybe even jazz band. When do you think they should like be thinking about learning slap bass?
I don't know, because it's more of a parlor trick. It's not, I mean, it's a right hand technique. Anything you play with your left hand with your fingers or a pick, you can play, we can play pretty much slapping and popping, you know. It's just all the same thing. And I usually reserve most slapping and stuff and popping for solos, because it differentiates, you know, my sound from what I'm doing. Because I've got some pedals and I hardly ever use them. You know, with bass, it's so hard just to get a sound that is cutting through the band, that's moving air, that's not drowning anybody else out. And then you start putting effects on it, and it takes a lot of the art. For me, it takes a lot of the artifacts out of my sound that made me punchy. That's going to make me punchy through the PA.
Yeah, I want to talk about tone in a second. What's coming through my mind is like shaky ground. Okay, so like something like whatever.
Okay, now I would start something out like. And start at a. Stuff incrementally.
That's slap though, right? I mean, you're kind of doing slappy stuff, and that's a total like regular standard that you would play, right? You know, so like, I mean, you think like late high school, if they're starting in 5th grade or high school-ish, you could.
I would say any time because it's a right hand, and any kind of right hand stuff is all about repetition. Any left hand technique stuff I teach is all about slow, painstaking attention to detail. And I teach with left-hand technique, I teach a thing that borrows from upright bass. If one finger is down, the other finger is down on the fret behind it.
Sure, yeah.
Supported fingering.
Yeah, I do that with my students too.
Yeah,
Put your one down if you're playing the 2, yeah.
And also thumb placement is really important. It's for most people, it's impossible to open their hand up if their thumb is above their second finger. Once they get it even, they can just spread out and it just magically happens. But if they get like this too much, it's counterproductive. But if it's like pretty close
you want it
even with that second finger.
You don't want the thumb under the fingers. You want it right with the fingers.
Yeah, and especially not, well, you can be a little bit under, but not really over the fingers.
Oh, right.
I mean, that's when your hand is like this and you can't open it up. But this way, it just opens up and you have all the finger you need.
Interesting.
And also, you know, I do the 1 finger per fret thing. I teach that because you need that for certain things, for typing stuff out. That kind of stuff, you know. But most endurance, I also teach the endurance posture, which you almost don't need to teach that to people. That comes from upright too.
The what?
An endurance posture.
Endurance
That's
posture,
4 fingers for 3 frets. That's 1, 2, and 4. I almost leave the 3rd finger out. The 3rd finger you just use whenever you want. So I would go
again. Turn back a little bit so they can see it.
Instead of, and I do my octaves with my first finger and my pinky. I don't do them like this or this. I usually just do them like this. And let's see. So here's, I'll take you there. Here it is, 1 finger per fret. Now, I don't think I could do that for 15 minutes without my hand falling off.
Right.
It's not ergonomic. Here is an endurance posture substituting my 3rd finger for my 4th finger, and it fits in my hand really easy.
Instead of 3, Spacing's kind of a thing on bass, isn't it? Because it's so far to reach all the stuff. Like, spacing's not even a thing for us because we can reach everything so easily, you know. So we're not even worried about, you know, 4 is nothing. You know, reaching everything we need to is right here. We rarely have to like. So you guys really have a choice for fingers. We don't really have I mean, we have fingerings that we'll do in classical, of course, but yeah, it sounds like fingering is a big thing for bass.
Well, a lot of it's just endurance, you know, and the more ergonomic it is for you to play, the more you can play, more likelihood you're going to be able to play it in time over a relatively long period of time, a repetitive bass line.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and also you want it to sound like it feels good for you to play it. this way feels good. I can do that for 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Not even get tired. And even when I'm soloing, I'm using my fourth finger line. Okay, and I do use my third finger, but I'll do it like, you know, that kind of stuff. Or
Sure. Yeah, to go two strings.
Yeah. Or just I don't know. Sometimes it just depends on how I'm feeling. I'll use just my fourth finger. I'll use my fourth and my third, and it's almost subconscious because, and if you think about it, this is on one tendon, this is on one tendon. These two fingers are on one tendon, so they're interchangeable fingers, you know. And it's almost not fair, especially if you play classical guitar, that this is your smallest finger and it's required to do the most work. It's that's life though. But but you know, and I found like the more like I have an economy of motion and an ergonomic thing happening, I can play in time, you know. And I can think about what is the singer doing. I can think, you know, and also teach the 1 finger per fret plus 1 fret plus 1 fret. So you have like it's just almost, you can pick either way to go. You know, that is really good when you're reading music, when you're sight reading music, you know, so because you can't look, you know, or if you're trying to follow somebody, you know, you're standing behind a guitar player, looking at his left hand, you know, even if they're inverting off the pinky, you can kind of you can hear, so you can tell what they're doing.
Sure.
And I do that a lot when I don't know the song. You know, I'll just I'm looking at people's hands, you know, to see what they're doing, you know. And I started on guitar before I ever played bass, and which would explain a lot of my, that's a total guitar lick.
That's guitar riff.
You know, those are total guitar licks, man. That's not a bass lick. And if I was really cool, I would solo like a sax player. You know, that's like, oh, you know, like Jocko or somebody. You know, but I don't. I play like Paul Greenlease. You know, that's the good news and the bad news.
Yeah. So last thing I'd love to talk about a little bit is you were talking a minute about tone, and sometimes I'll feel like I'll hear some bass players and their instrumental pop out like really well. Like it's not boomy at all. It's not. It's like and sometimes they're coming, you know, they'll be up on the thing and they'll pop out really good when they're up on, you know, their high strings doing solo-y stuff. But even when they're down, you can hear that it's really like popping. And then there's other times where I'll hear bass stuff and I can't even tell what they're doing because it's so boomy, and it's maybe they have reverb on it or so. I don't know what they've got, but it's too like I can't. It's not articulated at all. You know,
that's a really big problem, and I'm going to switch basses to talk about this because on a passive bass, I've noticed a lot of guys, and I've seen like a lot of traveling acts like at Knuckleheads and places like that, especially when the outdoor stage had more of a high-end reference, it's more neutral now. They've done a lot to make it super good sounding on that stage. They put that carpet there, they put the foam up there, but if you're getting any kind of, if your bass sounds really super tinny, you're immediately you want to duck your tone knob. And this is a passive bass, so if this tone knob's all the way up, it's not doing anything. You know, and this is just a treble cut. Okay, and part of the deal is Leo Fender was deaf as a post. You know, he couldn't hear anything hardly, especially as he got older, and to the point like Sterling Ball, the guy knows Music Man now, he would go to Leo's shop after high school because his dad was in the company, and Leo Fender would be working on some. He'd get a bass and he'd have like a big flathead screwdriver. He put the knife edge on the fulcrum point of the bridge. He put the other end and smash it into the cartilage of the ear, and he'd go, "Oh, that sounds great," you know. he literally was getting a reference by
Wow.
doing that, you know.
Beethoven style.
Yeah, and so
You know, yeah.
and most of the stuff that he was doing, he would look at oscilloscopes and see what was happening,
Wow.
spectrum wise, and he would get feedback off of musicians. They said, "Yeah, these Fenders are really tinny. Can we get rid of some of that?" And I would say, like, you need a certain amount of high end and particularly mid range to pop through as a bass player. And usually, if a bass player is not cutting through, they don't have enough mid range. And also, if you have slightly too much low end, it makes you invisible.
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough low end, then you sound like a guitar player and you don't have any heft and nobody can hear you anyway. But so it's kind of a balancing act. And I usually play with, I favor instruments that have a good mid-range bump, you know, and it really gives me, it gives my notes enough texture that they cut through. And also I try to avoid playing with even slightly too much low end because it just muddies everything up. And nobody can hear you, and nobody can hear anything else, you know. And you know, another thing to help you pop through sometimes as a bass player, and I grew up playing like with a pick, and then I quit playing with one. I was anti-pick for years, and then I got a gig with this big redneck biker guy, who was probably one of the best musicians I've ever played with in my life, and I love to this day. He wanted me to shut up and play bass and not like be a pain in the neck, right? Which is a big thing in musicianship, just be easy to work with. And he had fired me one day for being sassy with him, you know, because I
Like
told
just talking.
well, I told him if he didn't like what I was playing, I'm sure his old bass player wasn't doing anything, and he got really mad and fired me. Then he hired me back, you know, but he said, "Hey, Paul, I got something that's going to improve your tone tremendously. It's 25 cents, called Guitar Pick." And I had to do it to keep my gig, right? And we actually were recording an album, and of course he would make me play part of the bass line like this and flip my pick back like that and play the other part like that. I had to keep flipping because he would do that. He would do his solos like this, and he would play all his single note stuff or his rhythm guitar stuff with the pick. And but then later on, it became a convert. I go, you know, sometimes that is the really grown-up musician thing to do. I mean, because I could go, that doesn't really sound as good as,
Yeah.
that sounds
do it
like
back the other way again.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely sounds better with the pick, I think.
Yeah, and
Do it with the pick again.
okay.
What would you call that? The difference? What are the English words for that?
So what I don't know, but I would say the what I'm doing is I'm palm muting. I'm not just going. That's not going to get it.
Right.
I'm going. I'm going.
Which hand are you doing that with?
I'm doing that with my right hand.
Oh.
I'm muting. I'm getting slightly over that.
Oh,
that
you're
fulcrum
muting
point.
it here.
Yeah, and I'm just barely over. If I went too far at all, it wouldn't sound like anything.
Yeah, see, that's cool.
Yeah, and so, but sometimes I like. Yeah, sometimes
Yeah,
that
wow.
doingy sound of a pick is cool.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes I'll be playing and I'll play a song with the pick. Sometimes I'll play with my fingers, and it just depends. Sometimes I'll go, I don't like this pick, and I'll stick it back here. I'll have it like actually. I'll have it like right
magic
here.
trick, yeah.
And I'm playing like this with my thumb and my finger.
Yeah.
And it helps me endurance-wise to kind of alternate between doing this and this and this, you know. Or sometimes I just. It just depends on what I'm feeling that minute, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Because you seem to go straight at it, and I see a ton of bass players going. You know, they'll
like this.
pull it and
that's almost like an upright thing.
and you seem to
Like,
do
like then part of the deal is I anchor off my forearm, so my thumb is super close to my fingertips all the way across,
Yeah.
and it gives me a real good evenness of timing in theory. Okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully in practical application. But so when I'm playing, I'm not pulling through. I'm not playing like this. I'm not playing. I'm playing like.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going.
Yeah.
Instead of like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I got my thumb really close to my. Look how close my thumb is to that string. It's amazing. It's not even killing it, you know.
Yeah.
And when I first learned how to play, I always anchored off my thumb off of this, which I'd be awesome on these two strings. I'd be less effective on these here.
Sure.
And if I went to slap,
you're moving your thumb with you. Yeah.
When I would go to slap like this, for about a split second, my thumb would have no blood in it, so it'd be like the first couple of notes would come down like I was slapping with my big toe until I had blood in my thumb. Mm. This way, my thumb is completely loose, so I can go.
You're anchoring there.
Yeah,
is where you get your leverage or whatever.
And that's really how these basses. A lot of electric basses are designed, but they've got a arm contour here and they got a belly cut here. And I've had some really great basses that were slab basses. First off, I've had a tummy since I was like 6 years old. Okay, I probably went on my first diet when I was 2. So I don't need my bass all the way out here. Also, I anchor off my forearm, so having like a sharp edge here just absolutely kills me. I can't do it, you know. So, these basses are designed to put this part into your chest and then lock it down like this, and then it just stays in place regardless of what your left hand is doing.
That's interesting with the shape of the bass and the guitars. I would think that big acoustics would be similar to that, where they're like, they're up against you, and we're different on ours because we definitely have a thing here, where we're putting it here, and you got to figure out how to not get it to, but the rest of it isn't even on us. So that's really interesting that you have to there's certain basses that would drive you freaking crazy on your stomach, or that they're out too far, or that you're rubbing. Yeah. Like you're talking about rubbing on your forearm. That's so funny that bass is kind of like that.
Yeah, and really a lot of a bass player's sound is in their right hand. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did a gig a few years ago up for Delbert McClinton, one of the greatest soul singers of all time, living or dead. And so I'm in the opening band. I've got my mid-60s, pre-CBS Fender P bass, the blah blah blah, and it's and which is bass players. Oh wow, it's pre-CBS, but and so we're in the opening band, so we're sound checking. They're already sound checking their stuff set up. I turn around, and the guy's got a P bass, precision bass, and it is a Indonesian Fender Squire P bass with flat wounds on it. I'm like, I can't believe that guy's not at least playing something decent. I mean, I wouldn't bring something vintage on the road that I'd need therapy if something happened with it. But I mean, I at least would bring a quality instrument that would probably sound good. And of course, the guy gets up and plays, and he sounds great. Yeah. And I asked him, I go, have you had something done to that? He goes, what do you mean? I go, do you got good pickups? He goes, no, it's all in the hands, man. And he was the best player in the band. He was wonderful. And I ended up running into another guy who played bass for Paul Thorne, and he said, he loves that bass. He's got a whole bunch of nice stuff. He just loves that cheapo bass. And I've never been that way. I wish I could have a $200 bass and be super happy with it. I've always been way too bougie for that, I guess. I gotta have, and as a bass player, I can't have a cheap bass for me, because my bass it's my instrument and my pedal board all in the guitar right here, and then I got the amp. I don't have a separate thing where I can hit and some toe bombs where I can double my gain and stuff like that. It's all gonna be right here, EQ'd into my sound, and then I can milk it out with my hands as I'm in a train of thought. And bass is not really a lick centered instrument; it's an approach centered instrument. Now, if somebody play Jocko.
What does that mean?
Well, if they go, okay, play Jocko. I'm not really playing Jocko licks. I'm playing that train of thought. And even in Jocko's lifetime, there was guys that were out Jockoing him. But his biggest thing was he's got thought of that, and he single-handedly defined fretless bass playing, which you can't even think of 20 guys that defined rock guitar. or classical violin. You know, like he did that all by himself, and he came out out of nowhere. He had that sound, and his biggest gift, I think, was his ability to take a song like The Chicken, or like you know, Green Dolphin Street or Invitation, and make them, every song he did immediately became a signature song. It's like Ringo Starr sang "Hi with a Little Help from My Friends" of the Beatles. Joe Cocker did it, and now it's Joe Cocker's song. You know what I mean? That's the big difference. Because he put so much on that with his own creativity and his own musical prowess, and that's a big gift of Jocko. Now, you know, and most of the time, if you were into Jocko as a bass player, you better keep that on the down low, because people associate that with overplaying, you know, and craziness, but mostly overplaying.
Yeah.
You know, lead bass playing. And
Yeah, lead bass. Yeah,
nobody needs that. And you were talking about, like, you know, like guys that just play too much. Usually, it's just they've got chops and stuff, but they're not really paying attention to what the music needs. You know, they're not listening to the ensemble. And if you really if you really think about, like, what does the song need? What's happening right here? What is the context that I'm in? You know?
Right.
And what does this song need? You're usually in no danger of ever playing too much, you know, because you're thinking about what the song needs.
Right.
You're not trying to edificate yourself.
See, I'm thinking of like a Bela Flex band, right? They all overplay, every one of them.
That's
you
the
know,
whole
but
band, though,
but that's what they're trying to do, and they're so good musicians that they know exactly when to overplay. And the fact that when he's doing like a like, that's a really notey bass line, but he's not, like, his volume is perfect, you know. And then
and he's right in the pocket too.
And he's right in the pocket, and then his brother, you know, doing just super notey drummers, but everybody's balanced, like, perfect, and so they like know how to totally get away with that.
Yeah.
You know, you said something about tone being in the hands, and this is one thing kind of on the violin front is we talk about tone on the violin with right hand a lot, like because most of it a lot of times is coming from a bow, but recently I've been realizing, when I went back after college, and I was realizing that, for example, I don't know if you guys can see this, but on this string, if I put my fingers on there, it's barely on this, you know, this D string, right? And I can get a tone, but I'm barely on it. And my teacher was showing me that I need to do that. You know, I need to have that string, like, right in the middle of my finger.
Yeah.
And when you're playing a bow, you can hear it. I mean, if you're really listening. And so I was too far over this way on it, especially when I'm on my high strings and I'm going over there. And so my point is that I wonder if how much of, because you were talking about a lot of it is your right hand, about how you're striking obviously you start, you start using your fingernail, or you start barely tapping it wrong, as opposed to, like, the meatier finger. But also, I wonder how many bass players are real sloppy on their left hand, where they're not getting good, like, contact into the, and that's what the problem is with me.
That's a great question. There's a couple things. I really, and I started playing, like, right in the middle of the fret.
Yeah.
But I found, and this through instruction, getting lessons and stuff, that if you play right behind the fret, that it not only is it a little bit less distance from fret to fret, it's cleaner, because here the fret is right where that note happens. So you're just behind that fulcrum point there, and it's way cleaner. Cleaner notes.
Play one in the middle again.
It doesn't sound that much different, but if you get too far this way.
Yeah, so there it is, you're bad.
But this way, if I'm always aiming for right behind the frets, I'm gonna hit clean notes. If I'm
Interesting.
it gives me a good part to aim for, and it's less distance technically. This is a little bit of a stretch,
Sure. Yeah.
And also, as far as muting, like going up, I'll mute with my right hand. Going down, I mute with my left hand.
Oh, you're muting the
As
played on. Oh.
And you do get a lot of note length from your left hand too. And also the idea of this is a good exercise to just, you're fretting a note and start fretting, letting off pressure, and then just get to its just hard enough to make it fret the note. Instead, and
to figure out how hard to push.
And you know this, it's impossible to push down hard and play fast. First thing you have to do is you have to really relax your fingers and lighten up that left hand. You want to clamp it down and just choke it to death, but man, you're not going to be able to get any speed out. It's physically impossible as a human. And so, and most of the time, my left hand looks pretty relaxed. You know. And if I was really gripping it, man, I wouldn't be able to do anything. It wouldn't sound good.
Because I'll hear a lot of, like, at a jam, let's say, you know, you know, every sixth note, every fourth note is that, you know, they're getting just a bad bass and do 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 do. You know, they're hearing ring on every single note, and I'll just hear them get, you know, every seventh, eighth note is, you know, kind of a, you know.
That's usually like they just don't have good string-to-string balance with the right hand. And also, you know, we were talking about that tone knob. When people, and I've seen so many people that they just, you know, it's got texture.
Like
this,
that's, you know.
It's underwater. It's kind of fun.
What'd you just do there?
I just turned the tone knob all the way off. And I've seen a lot of people do that, and they're invisible bass player. They're underwater. They can't cut through. Because really, if you sound like this by yourself, you're going to sound like this
with the band.
Yeah, you're just going to sound like a note. It's not going to sound like all scratchy and stuff. And but if you sound like this by yourself, you sound like this with the band. You're invisible. Nobody can hear you because you're underwater.
So you're saying you need tone. You want that tone, not up too far because it's too bright, but you want to use some of that tone.
Usually nobody ever has too bright of a bass sound, and especially if you use speakers that have those tweeter horns in them, you don't have to have your amp shooting razor blades at you. The response is all there, so you can have an eye. But if you go, I don't think this has a tweeter in it, but like my 410 cabinets, I've got slice for days, so it's like pow, you know, and I can go from doo-doo to like without touching anything.
And pops out.
And what I do is I set my amp to where I got a lot of juice on it, and I can just idle. And then if I need to like punch anything, it's there. I got the headroom, you know, bam, you know, and direct traffic and stuff like that.
I think it's so fascinating with the different ranges of these two instruments, because like on mine, I turn my knob all the way off, you know, I mean my tone, you know, because our instrument is so bright and just, it's a personal thing. The bright violin drives me nuts. I can't stand it. And so I always want to have more, I want to turn, in a weird way, I want to turn my tone off to get more tone, like to get more ringy, because I want it to sound more acoustic, almost a classical kind of resonant kind of a sound. And that's so funny because you're feeling like you need more of the pop, and I need less. You know, like
thing. And Steve Morse, the guitar player for Deep Purple for a long time, he had the Dixie Dregs and stuff like that. Great guitar player. He was real big on if he was playing a modified telly, he'd roll his tone knob off for his leads, and then he'd put it back on for his rhythms. You know, and that was his choice.
Because he was up, right? Probably for his leads. I mean, he was up on the higher register.
Up high, and he'd kind of roll that back a little bit so it wouldn't be too shrill, and then he could snap it back up and go back down and get the twangy stuff on the low end and make it speak. And and I've always been really into like just have all that tone, the high end, the mids, decent amount of lows, have it all in your sound, and then you clean up your right hand so you don't get a bunch of scratchy, or left hand too, so you're not getting any, or like this kind of stuff. That always sounds terrible. You could be underwater if you're doing that. It's going to sound terrible. But and you know, a lot, and also with sometimes live, I juice my gain up a hair to put some hair on it. It adds presence and apparent volume without, or audibility without making it over. Like you can just keep turning your master up, and you don't, all of a sudden you're not getting any more volume, any more stuff you can hear, but you're making the rest of the band mad on a bass, because it's omnidirectional instrument. Okay, so but I found if I just goose my gain up a hair, all of a sudden I can hear it. I'm happy, you know, and I need to be able to hear what my fingers are doing on the strings. I need to hear all the notes, you know, and so I need a good immediate reference, you know. And if I play, and I notice if I play with just a hair too much low end, that goes away until I clean it back up. So it's always a balancing act. Of course, you can go, well, I don't have enough low end, and you just, oh, now I'm fine. And it's just like that. It's a timbre thing. Yeah. And I usually, I EQ my basses. I usually start right over the pickup. That's kind of my center point. If I need to be twangier, I get over this way, or I'll go this way.
Sure.
This way if I need to be more.
Yeah, and ours is the same. You pull out and you get more warm, you know, and you go towards the bridge and you get more bright.
Yeah, and so all that you can do with your right hand on a bass, and I tend to, for that reason, I tend to favor single pickup basses. I got a jazz bass over there I brought, and yeah, I don't play them that much, man. And also there's you have to have an instrument. I play different instruments because different instruments, basses sound different with different bands. I can't just have one bass and have it sound good in all my situations. Certain ones, I have ones that, like, if I don't know the music, I'll play that one because I can get around on it super fast. You know, then once I figure out what sonically needs to happen, but what's going to sit in the mix EQ wise the best, I'll bring that bass to that gig all the time, or basses like that, you know. But I have found, like in rooms like Llewellyn's was, certain places that are really like, you hit a snare drum, it's like a 30-06 one off, and it's like the kick drum's like.
Yeah, Llewellyn's was something else of a room.
I'll usually I'll use something like a jazz bass or jazz bass specifically that has that bridge pickup, so I can pan towards that and tighten my sound up. Without killing everybody out front and everybody screaming that we're too loud.
Yeah. Know, so then in a church, because it was basically a church, you know, a church with the high ceilings and stuff. So you would want less boomy there. Yeah. Right. You would want it tight and precise in a room like that.
Or like a room like the Uptown Theater. You know, I mean, that's a classic example of, you know, it's a real boomy room, and so if you're up here. It's going to sound terrible. You need to be over your pickup and pulling some twang out with your right hand. And I saw the Little River. We opened up for the Little River Band at the Uptown in a band I was in. And the funny thing was, I go, this is going to be great because the bass on all the Little River Band records sounds amazing. It's juicy. It's out front. So this guy comes. And you can tell he's he was the second bass player. He sang on a couple of their hits. You can tell he's like a vested member because he's old and ugly, and all the other guys are a lot younger and more physically fit and way better looking than him. He looks terrible. They look great, right? So you can tell, oh, he must be one of the close to the original guys. So he's playing, and they're all. There's no amps on stage, so you know there's no reason the bass shouldn't sound good. But instead of being like this, get some twang, he's like this. He's feathering it because he's going all in ears, and he thinks he needs that. That's what his reference is, because the bass and the in ear monitors is like. It sounds like a guitar. It's not fun at all. So I use in ears with Elton Dan, but I have an amp too. Yeah. And I have my amp turned down a little bit, but I get the body of my sound from the PA and also from that amp, and then I have my in ears just a little bit to get texture. So I hear this, but I also hear you know, so it's fun to play still.
You're right.
Yeah. So,
I've never used it, or at one time I was auditioning for a band that I couldn't end up playing with, but they had inner ears, and it was weird. It was I didn't like it. Like I was just not used to playing with them. But one last question for you. I found that with a lot of my students, I want to. There's all these like electric violins and the cool looking wah pedals and I used to have this Yamaha and it was this purple violin. It was have you ever seen those ones that are like just an outline so you could like put your hand through it, you know? And so I mean you can like hold it like this, you know, and so there it's serial and they're all the middle schoolers like, oh, purple violin, you know, and they get all enamored with all the little toys that you've got and stuff, you know, and so like but I also heard this other guy on that same topic where it was like Heifetz or something, some famous violin player, and the lady came up after the show and she was like, your violin is so beautiful, what is it? And he held up, he's like, funny, I don't hear it now, you know. And his joke was that like you know, all you guys suck as players, but you're obsessed with your equipment, you know, and you don't know how to play, but you've got your $3,000 guitar, you know, and so I mean it sounds like from what you're saying, I mean, and this is kind of with every instrument I would think, is that, yeah, the equipment, like, affects you, you know, I mean, you get a Stradivari, and it's, you know, it's a different ball game, you know, playing on violin, but, like, how much should you be, because we were talking about the tone thing, I mean, you can, okay, now I'm on the string, and that has nothing to do with your guitar, you know, that has to do with your... And you know, like how much should you be obsessing as a bass player about your freaking equipment?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I came up in an era where like every 5 years it was like quantum leaps in bass amps and 5 strings and all 6 strings and all that, and so there was a lot of excuses to spend a lot of money. And I never started getting married until I was like 37, so I just had a lot of time to buy way too much stuff. and I will say no amount of money that I ever spent on a bass or amp made me play better than I actually was. They just made it more fun to play like how I actually played. And they're just tools, really. But also, we're making art, man. So it's so tactile. You want something that's pleasant to play, that really sounds. Because if you're not getting a good sound, it's not fun to play.
Right.
And it's not worthwhile, really.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have something that sounds good, and for me, is playable too. I'm real picky about action and stuff like that.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about action, but that's probably big on bass, right?
It is, because just the logistics of it. And this one's I probably need to loosen the truss rod a little bit and crank the action down. But with basses, it's this hardware is so heavy duty. Once you set it, it never moves. And I just usually control my action with my truss rod. Yeah, and sometimes if I'm playing outside, I'll have a wrench right on my amp and I'll crank on it right there on stage. I put a little tweak on it, straighten the neck up, because the action's getting abhorrently high and not fun to play.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then I bring it back inside in the air conditioning. It's like, you know, I'm like, uh-oh, bring it back, you know. Yeah. That one's got a wheel there, so I can just do it right on the fly.
Wow.
This one I got to take these vintage ones, I got to take a screwdriver and carefully try not to booger up the rest of the heel and everything, which is a nightmare. But I usually control my action with my truss rod, and I try to get the neck to where it has a little bit of relief, but not too much. And then I set the action, and then it's close to pretty even all the way up and down the neck. Of course, it's less high right here than it is here or here, but it's not like I'm going uphill the higher I get up the neck. It's pleasant, you know. So
I found that that's so interesting you said about the tone, because like I think that's true, because like for me, you know, when you're playing through a song, like you're kind of getting the whole deal of where your hand goes and kind of the rhythm, and tone isn't the last thing you should be dealing with, but there's like a whole bunch of other stuff, because for us on violin, it takes years to get like a really good, like full, to be able to do that with no, you know, and that takes like years to do it really well.
Oh, I can see that, yeah.
So like for us, tone is just like a thing that kind of comes, and you work on it, but you don't like worry about it really, you know, because it just takes forever to get your bow control. But I agree with you in the fact that like if you can't even like make a good sound, you just want to throw it away.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's my biggest problem with adult students is because they know how this thing's supposed to sound. They've heard it for 35 years, and so they're like, why doesn't it sound like Somewhere with the Rain? You know, why doesn't it sound? You know, why doesn't it sound pretty? And so I'm trying to go, no. We're working on rhythm, right? You know, like, and they're like, but the sound, you know, and they just freak out. And so, like, I know what you mean about the tone. Like, it's a thing that you can easily get like obsessed with, but it is if you keep getting going on every single note, like it's like, why am I even sitting here, right?
There's been places I played where like the PA is just, you know, the response of the room is crazy. My bass sounds terrible, and there's nothing. I've made the mistake of trying to save the world with my right hand, and it doesn't work. You know, I just have to grin and bear it. But you know, if I know my fingerboard really well, I understand how my amp works and everything, and I know the music, I can think about how I sound. And one of the umbrella of Elton Dan tribute bands is a Fleetwood Mac thing. And John McVie is a very simple bass player, but I have to really think to make my bass sound that good, like that. I have to think about it.
Yeah.
And it takes thought. And so I spend a lot of times thinking about not just the notes I'm playing or how loud they are, but how I sound. You know? And you know, that's a big thing for me, too, like what you're talking about. And that just takes experience. And some people have good sound in right hands, but some people really have to work to get to where their right hands have definition and sound on a bass. You know, it takes a lot of work sometimes, and it's kind of weird that everybody's different like that. You know. Yeah. So, anything else, Rob?
I think that's probably pretty good. Tell them one more time you're playing with the Elton. Say it again.
Okay, I play with Elton Dan, and I play with Flanagan's Right Hook and Howard Mahan, and I also play with Dave Hayes.
Yeah, playing all over Kansas City. So, thanks for coming, man. That was fun.
What a pleasure.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'm gonna try to do some more of these. Have some people over and have kind of a mini master class or whatever you want to call it, but talking about kind of different instruments specifically. We've talked really broadly on the show, you know, a lot about broader topics, but kind of dive in. But yeah, there you go. This is Casey Music Talk. Get out of here. Check out some of the other videos. Like and subscribe to the channel. Really helps with the algorithm.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. All right, see you later.
Cool.